This is Commission President Ryan Calkins convening the regular meeting of February 24th, 2026. The time is 10:37 a.m. We're meeting in person today at the SEA Conference Center and virtually on Microsoft Teams. All commissioners are present with me today, with Commissioner Mohammed joining virtually, and they are currently gathered in the executive session room awaiting the opening of the public meeting. We'll now recess into executive session to discuss two items regarding litigation or potential litigation and legal risk per RCW 4230.110(1)I, with one of those items also regarding the sale or lease of real estate per RCW 4230.101(c) for approximately 60 minutes. We'll reconvene into public session at 12 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Commissioner President, I just want to note that Commissioner Mohammed may or may not be on the executive session call. She will definitely be here for the regular meeting, is my understanding.
Okay, great. And we'll make sure that attendance reflects whether or not she's there.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are in recess.
Good afternoon. This is Commission President Ryan Calkins reconvening the regular meeting of February 24th, 2026. The time is 12:10 p.m. We're meeting in person today at the SEA Conference Center and virtually on Microsoft Teams. Clerk Hart, please call the roll of all commissioners in attendance.
Thank you. Beginning with Commissioner Calkins.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Fellman.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Hasagawa is also present. And Commissioner Mohammed joining us virtually.
Here.
Thank you, Commissioner. We do have a quorum established.
All right. Thank you, Clerk Hart. For everyone in the meeting room, please turn your cell phones to silent. For anyone participating on Microsoft Teams, please mute your speakers when not actively speaking or presenting. Please keep your cameras off unless you are a commissioner or a member of staff participating virtually and are actively addressing the commission. Members of the public addressing the commission during public comment may turn on their cameras when their name is called to speak and will turn them back off again at the conclusion of their remarks. For anyone at the dais, please turn off your computer speakers and silence your devices. Please also remember to address your request to speak through the chair and wait to speak until you've been recognized. You'll turn your microphones on and off as needed. All of the items noted here will ensure a smoother meeting. All votes today will be taken by the roll call method or by general consent, so it is clear for anyone participating virtually how votes are cast. Commissioners will say aye or nay when their name is called. We are meeting on the ancestral lands and waters of the Coast Salish people with whom we share a commitment to steward these natural resources for future generations. This meeting is being digitally recorded and may be viewed or heard at any time on the Port's website and may be rebroadcast by King County Television. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item of business today is approval of the agenda. As a reminder, if a commissioner wishes to make a general comment for or against an item on the consent agenda, it is not necessary to pull the item from the consent agenda. Rather, a commissioner may offer general supporting or opposing comments later in the meeting once we get to that part of the agenda. However, it is appropriate at this time if a commissioner wants to ask questions of staff or wishes to have dialogue on a consent agenda item to request the item be pulled for separate discussion. Are there any items to be pulled?
For full discussion?
Would you like to?
I thought we. All right, definitely. And I just have to remember the number.
8D.
Excellent. Thank you for having great staff.
All right.
I would so pleased to move 8D.
Item 8D is pulled. Are there any other items to be pulled from the consent agenda or any other motions to rearrange the orders of the day? All right, Commissioners, the question is now on approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All right, the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any objection to approval of the agenda as amended? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as amended. Commissioners, we start our day with a proclamation. Clerk Hart, can you please read the item into the record, and then Deputy Executive Director Goon will introduce it.
Thank you. This is Agenda Item 4A, Proclamation Commemoration of February 19th, 2026 as the Day of Remembrance for Japanese American Incarceration. This is EO 9066.
Commissioners, this proclamation recognizes February 19th as a day of remembrance, acknowledging a painful chapter in our nation's history. On this date in 1942, Executive Order 9066 authorized the forced removal and incarceration of more than 120,000 Japanese Americans, including residents of Washington State, based solely on ancestry. This action represents a profound violation of civil liberties that must be openly recognized and remembered. The proclamation serves as a solemn acknowledgement of that injustice and its lasting impact on families and communities. It also reaffirms our commitment to equity, justice, and the protection of constitutional rights for every resident. By observing this day, we honor the resilience and perseverance of Japanese Americans. We also renew our responsibility to ensure that such violations of civil rights are never repeated. Commission Strategic Advisor Francis Cho is here to introduce our proclamation readers today. Francis?
Thank you very much, Deputy Executive Director Karen Goon. Commissioner President Calkins, Commissioner and Deputy Executive Director Karen Goon. My name is Francis Cho, Commission Strategic Advisor. Joining me today is Stan Shikuma of Suru for Solidarity to my right. And online is Stephanie Tsukiko Nomura Haley, President of the Seattle chapter of the Japanese American Citizens League, who will be helping me read the proclamation into the record. With that, I will turn it over to Stan to begin reading of the proclamation.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me here, and thank you for presenting this resolution. Whereas February 19, 2026 marks 84 years since President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, which authorized the forced removal and incarceration of over 120,000 individuals of Japanese ancestry, two-thirds of whom were American citizens, and most of whom were children and were stripped of their constitutional rights without due process. And whereas Washington State carried lasting wounds from this injustice, as Japanese people from vibrant communities across Seattle, Tacoma, Auburn, Fife, and throughout the region were torn from their homes, farms, and businesses, their lives and livelihoods destroyed by government-sanctioned discrimination. And whereas on March 30, 1942, Bainbridge Island witnessed the first forced removal under Executive 9066 when 227 Japanese Americans, including Fumiko Hayashida and her 13-month-old daughter Natalie, were compelled to board a ferry bound for the Manzanar Relocation Center. The iconic photograph of Fumiko holding her sleeping daughter became an enduring symbol of this dark chapter in our nation's history, and their subsequent transfer to Minidoka internment camp in Idaho reflected the cruel reality faced by thousands who endured nearly 3 years of incarceration before the last camp closed in March 1946. And whereas the Puyallup Assembly Center, euphemistically called Camp Harmony, was among 17 hastily constructed temporary detention sites established across the West Coast, located at what is now the Washington State Fairgrounds, serving as staging areas before detainees were transported to more permanent incarceration camps. And whereas the Nisei soldiers of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team and 100th Infantry Battalion exemplified extraordinary courage and patriotism, becoming the most decorated unit in U.S. military history, while their own families remained imprisoned behind barbed wire. Their service a testament to unwavering loyalty in the face of unconscionable justice.
And whereas today we witness troubling echoes of this history as recent federal immigration policies, including reinstated travel bans and deportation policies targeting individuals based on nationality, have expanded immigration enforcement operations in schools and places of worship, have led to the forced removal of families, including over 400 children at its peak in January 2026, have seen executive orders seeking to eliminate birthright citizenship, have witnessed mass deportation programs, all of which replicate the discriminatory targeting of communities based on national origin and immigration status, making the lessons of Executive Order 9066 not merely historical reflection, but an urgent contemporary warning. And whereas protecting civil liberties during time of crisis is not merely aspirational, but essential to our democracy, and vigilance against prejudice, fear-mongering, and the scapegoating of vulnerable communities remains our collective responsibility. And whereas in October 2025, the Port of Seattle Commission unanimously adopted Resolution number 3838, substantially strengthening the port's welcoming port policy directive in direct response to heightened threats against immigrant communities, affirming that the port will remain a place where all individuals, regardless of immigration status, are welcome, protected, and treated with dignity. And whereas February 19th stands as the Day of Remembrance, a solemn occasion to reflect on these injustices, educate our community about the dangers of unchecked government power and racial prejudice, and renew our commitment to ensuring such violations of fundamental rights never occur again. And whereas the Port of Seattle condemns all acts of harassment, intimidation, discrimination, or any other forms of bigotry against any and all individuals, and affirms the right of every individual to equal protection under the law and to be judged by their actions rather than their identity.
Now, therefore, the Port of Seattle Commission hereby honors and commemorates February 19th, 2026 as a day of remembrance for Japanese American incarceration, honors the resilience and immeasurable contributions of Japanese Americans who endured injustice with dignity, and commits to the vigilant protection of civil rights and equity for all people. Be it resolved, the Port of Seattle Commission calls for federal government accountability of ICE and other federal immigration enforcement agency practices, believes that a full investigation into deaths by ICE and other federal immigration enforcement agents and deaths that have occurred in ICE custody must occur, demands the end of detention abuses, and calls on the United States Congress to adopt meaningful and significant guardrails and accountability for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, including conducting independent investigations of lawlessness and violence conducted by immigration agents that have engaged in excessive use of force or violated individuals' constitutional rights. Be it further resolved that the Port affirms its responsibility to foster safe, welcoming facilities for all travelers and workers, and will continue to uphold its values of equity, transparency, and accountability in all interactions with federal agencies operating in port facilities, and will work to ensure that the rights and dignity of impacted communities are protected. Proclaimed by the Port of Seattle Commission this 24th day of February 2026.
Thank you, Francis, for presenting the proclamation, and to our guests for reading it into the record for us today. We truly appreciate your time and the representation of this important commemoration from the Japanese community. Commissioner Hasegawa, is there a motion to adopt the proclamation?
So moved, Mr. President.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, it has been made and seconded, and I'd like to open it up for any discussion or comments. Commissioner Hasegawa, would you like to start?
I'd like to thank Stan Shikuma for coming in on behalf of Sudu for Solidarity. Sudu for Solidarity's mission is to educate, advocate, and protest to close all U.S. concentration camps. I'd also like to thank Suki Nomura Henley for coming in to read virtually for us. She is president of Seattle JACL, the flagship chapter of the nation's oldest and largest Asian American civil rights organization. And Seattle JACL was there during World War II and actually organized as well from within the camps to demand civil rights and equal protections for all people. And today, the extension of that mission is to make sure that they are safeguarding the rights of people who are present-day targets of bigotry and discrimination. How awfully uncomfortable, how terribly uncomfortable it is to hear read into the record the truth about what this country has been able to do against people, American citizens, people without citizenship, all people deserving of due process and equal protection under the law. History is our teacher. No matter how uncomfortable it makes us, it is exactly what points us the direction that we need to go, informs the decisions that we should make, because otherwise we run the risk of repeating what's happened in the past. Same script, different cast. They say that history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And when I think about my great-grandfather, who immigrated to this country for economic opportunity through the Port of Seattle, how he had 4 children and worked from nothing to be able to support them, how he lost his wife in childbirth because she didn't have access to the resources that she needed, the same as other people would have had who lived in North Seattle. When I think about him being a first-generation limited English-speaking single father of 4 and having everything that he worked for taken from him, his assets seized, his bank account frozen, and him and his 4 children moved to the middle of the country behind barbed wire fences for no crime committed, no due process, just the broken promise of liberty and justice for all. I think about my grandfather, who was in his 20s when he met my grandmother, and married, and how, as an outcome of that, their generation's job was to fight for civil rights, a movement led by the Black community that ensured we raised the standard for all people of color in this country. I think about my father, the descendant of World War II incarcerees, who made the labor movement his fight. And I think about, what is our fight for our generation? We live in a time of federal overreach. So indeed, this proclamation is a reminder to all of us in this room today and beyond, about what it looks like to be the political leadership that we wish that our predecessors had. It is our job to make sure that we empower people with not just information about the facts, about history, but about what it is we can do to make the future better. So I thank you, Stan, and I thank you, Suki, I thank you, Francis, and all of our colleagues here at the Commission Office and at the Port for helping us speak truth to power. Because when President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, he used the power of the pen. Well, here it is in 2026, and we too have the power of the pen, and we will use it for goodness. So thank you very much. I appreciate the reading of this proclamation, and I urge a unanimous adoption by my colleagues.
Commissioner Cho.
Thank you. First and foremost, let me also just offer my thanks to Stan, to Suki, to our staff, Francis, for bringing this proclamation forward, and also to the leadership of Commissioner Hasegawa for continuing to be a strong advocate for constitutional and civil rights. You know, piggybacking off what Commissioner Hasegawa said, they say that, you know, you mentioned the quote that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. But hand in hand with that is, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. And you'll notice that despite the fact that we do this proclamation every year to commemorate this tragic historical event in our nation's history, this year's tone, the content of this year's proclamation is dramatically different from what we've seen in years past. You see direct references to our federal government. You see a call out for accountability on ICE. And that is precisely because we unfortunately have leaders today who have not learned from our history, who are dangerously close, if not have already exceeded some of the gross civil rights violations and constitutional violations that we saw happened to the Japanese Americans in that era. And so my fear here is that, we oftentimes say, and, those of us in the community always hear, never again in EO 9066. Well, never again is now. And it is incumbent on us as a public agency, as elected officials, as a steward of these public assets, to make that clear, not just to those who work in this place, but also to those who travel through it, to those who utilize these facilities, and even those who don't. We have an opportunity here with so much attention being brought up upon our city over the next few months. We're hosting the FIFA World Cup in June and July. We have an opportunity for us to take a stand and make our values heard. And so I'm in full-heartedly supportive of this proclamation, but also I'm in support of going fully beyond just a proclamation, but making sure that our actions speak louder than our words. Thank you.
Commissioner Fellman?
Thank you to our speakers for reminding us of this important day to recognize and the sacrifice folks have made. I think of the idea that Japanese Americans were fighting in the war while their family was in internment. The idea that the Tuskegee Airmen were fighting while in segregated armies. The love of this country sort of transcended the horrors that were being subject to it. In this faith in the future, I think it gives us all some hope that we're going to be able to live through this mess that we're currently in. But thank you for reminding us how bad it is. As a member of the Jewish community, never again resonates very strongly with me as well. Thanks.
One more comment from Commissioner Hasegawa.
February is Black History Month across the nation and right here at home. I'd just like to point out that long after folks got out of the concentration camps of World War II, the Japanese American sought formal accountability from the federal government in the form of an apology formally from the President and Congress and reparations. That movement was called the Redress Movement, and it was successful. We've seen this conversation implores us not to just consider this moment in history, but I think the broader context of what this nation has been capable of against people of color and other historically marginalized communities, and what we can do to be able to make those past wrongs right. I would like to just recognize and thank the members of the Blacks in Government Business Resource Group at the Port of Seattle who are leading an internal conversation about how the Port of Seattle can support the movement for reparations for the Black community for the experience of slavery. That also is a harrowing chapter of this American history. So thank you all very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Commissioner Mohammed, would you like to make a comment?
Happy to, as soon as I get off of mute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, first, I just want to start off by thanking Commissioner Hasegawa, Stan, and Suki, and Francis for your leadership for bringing this proclamation forward to us. I wish I was there in person with you all. I just appreciate my colleagues for continuing to elevate history in this space, and proclamations like this matter because they ensure that we do not forget and that we remain committed to protecting civil rights across the board, as we have heard already from our colleagues in the proclamation. And I especially want to appreciate the connection this proclamation makes to immigration and the intersection of just race, citizenship, and policy. History reminds us how quickly fear can override rights. And so for me, when I hear never again, that means we remain vigilant. Never again, it means to me that we continue to protect due process. It means we stand against policies rooted in fear, and honoring this day is about truth, accountability, and recommitment to our shared values. And so just lots of thanks for bringing this proclamation forward. And I just want to close by saying thank you to the Japanese American community for your resilience, leadership, and lasting contributions to our region, including here at the Port of Seattle. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Commissioner Mohammed. I'm going to wrap up. I've been thinking a lot about this as Commissioner Hasegawa began working on this proclamation and bringing it forward to us. And I think what strikes me about what we're talking about here and what we're going to talk about later in the meeting during our action on strengthening civil rights at the Port of Seattle is addressing what has been a thread that runs through American history, which is a pockmark on our history as we ultimately, in instances, we have deprived people of their liberty, of their ability to move freely, whether it was African slavery or the Japanese internment, or now this beginning of a federal enforcement action that is arbitrary detention of law-abiding residents of our country that is not justified under the guise of immigration enforcement or any other excuse that they're giving us. And so when I think about that, my thought is, what can I do? And what would I wish that people in my position would have done in the 1940s or in the 1820s or now that we are facing this moment that Commissioner Hasegawa so eloquently described? And a few things we know is the longer we wait, the harder it is to do something to stop it. That one of the tricks they use is to co-opt institutions. Institutions like ports or places of worship or art institutions like the Kennedy Center to inhibit our ability to organize, to create community, to see the bind across what they claim to be the differences between us. And so, in my position, I think it's absolutely essential that we make clear that this institution will not be co-opted, that we're going to throw sand in the gears of their machine in whatever way that we can. And so, as we think about this proclamation that is really a signal of our values and that will undergird the order that we're considering later today. The amount of gratitude I feel for the descendants of people who experienced this very privation, for being the ones who are so clear in reminding us of our history. That is what's so powerful for me. It really ought to be folks like me who are reminding us of our dark history, and instead we're asking the very people who suffered from it to be the ones to be the clarion call for all of us. And so today I'm not going to shirk that responsibility. I'm going to support this proclamation, and I'm also going to support our order on civil rights protections. And that's our start. And then we're going to continue as an institution, as elected officials, to work against these evil tendencies in our society to repeat bad history. And so with that, I am going to support this motion, and I truly thank Commissioner Hasegawa for bringing it forward. So with that, and hearing no further discussion, Clerk Hart, please call the roll for the vote. Commissioners, please say aye or nay when your name is called.
Thank you. Beginning with Commissioner Hasegawa.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Fellman.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Mohammed.
Aye.
Thank you. And Commissioner Calkins.
Aye.
Thank you. 5 ayes, 0 nays for this item.
The motion passes. All right, next on our agenda is the Executive Director's Report. Deputy Executive Director Goon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Commissioner President Calkins. Executive Director Metric is away taking some well-deserved time off. I have a few short updates and remarks for today. Commissioners, unfortunately, we are still in a partial federal government shutdown, meaning that the U.S. Department of Homeland Security does not have any approved annual appropriations at the moment. While ICE and CBP employees are still receiving pay through the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, our partners at TSA, FEMA, and Coast Guard are currently working without pay. We encourage Congress and the Trump administration to continue working together to find compromise that increases accountability and transparency for federal immigration enforcement officers, as well as a way to unlock funding for these other agencies. In the meantime, if this shutdown extends beyond the next federal pay period, port staff are preparing to provide support to TSA workers and other federal partners working without pay, including standing up the food pantry that we did last time. We will keep you updated. I also want to acknowledge the agility of our teams who are tracking the impacts of the partial federal shutdown on operations, particularly some fast-changing scenarios that took place over the weekend related to screening and international arrivals. Speaking of the federal government, I also want to note that the U.S. Supreme Court ruled this past Friday that President Trump's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to levy reciprocal tariffs is illegal. As an organization that moves goods through both our airport and seaport, this decision brings clarity to many of the importers who use our aviation and maritime gateways. However, the President will continue to levy tariffs through other existing authorities, including a newly imposed baseline 10% tariff. We will continue to monitor the administration's trade policies to understand how they impact the port's business lines. Continuing with maritime operations, I have an update on our customer engagements and work following the difficult decision we made last year to close covered docks at Salmon Bay Marina to ensure life safety of tenants and staff. We are now just 3 weeks away from the closure of those docks. Since staff made this announcement, we have worked hard to find new moorage for our customers, and by and large, we have been successful in delivering that support. Of our recreational moorage customers, more than 85 have found new moorage at other facilities. While a number of moorage customers preferred to find other freshwater and or covered slips, a number of customers moved to Shilshole Bay Marina, including several liveaboard customers. Of the remaining customers, many have stated to us that they have a plan for departure ahead of the closing date. Our staff are also working with other vessel owners regarding the Washington State rules regarding derelict vessels. As we knew was likely, it has been especially difficult to find new spaces for floating on water residences. As we near the closure deadline of March 18th, we are redoubling our efforts to assist our customers in finding moorage. We're also beginning to work on our strategic planning for the future of Salmon Bay Marina, balancing considerations across environmental, sustainability, and maritime industry needs, community benefit, and financial capacity. We will keep you updated as this date draws closer. Lastly, before I highlight items for today's meeting, I would like to share one item that was approved under the ED Delegation of Authority. Earlier this month, Executive Director Metric approved design funding for redevelopment of Hahapoose Village Park. This work will contribute towards executing the Port Parks Management Strategy that was finalized in November of 2024. Hahapoose Village Park is the first of 9 Duwamish River parks that will undergo improvement to better meet the needs of the Duwamish Valley community. Project improvement scope includes a new restroom amenities, improved pathways, lighting, wayfinding, and interpretive signage, hand-carried boat launch, boot washing stations, dog-friendly amenities, and utility new connections for proposed improvements. Work will consist of verifying field conditions, coordinating with several entities in the project vicinity, and completing design and permitting prior to the construction phase, which will be a future authorization request. Moving to today's commission meeting, I would like to highlight a few items. On our consent agenda today, we have an opportunity to regain a highly constrained facility and associated ramp space at a critical time in SEA's growth through the termination of the lease agreement with PACCAR. We will also take additional action to help meet the timeline for the Commission's shore power order through a dredging project at Terminal 91. This project is a critical enabling step to restoring necessary water depth and vessel maneuverability. With this action, we can help ensure ships can safely access shore power infrastructure and operate efficiently at berth. Under new business, we will seek your approval to advance design on our Terminal 91 Uplands Development Project, as well as consider a commission order related to community protection and civil rights. Commissioners, this concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Deputy Executive Director. We are now at committee reports. Erica Chung, Commission Strategic Advisor, will provide the report.
Good afternoon, President Calkins, Commissioners, and Deputy Executive Director Goon. I have 3 committee reports for you today. The Highline Forum met on January 28th with Tukwila Council President Armand Papillon chairing the meeting. The port introduced our new Aviation Managing Director, Wendy Ryder, and highlighted our efforts to reduce SCA airport employees' single occupancy commutes and support for expanded overnight transit. The forum members reappointed Council President Papillon and Sea-Tac Council Member Joe Vincent as community co-chairs for 2026. During the meeting, attending members share their state legislative priorities with common themes around funding needs, local fiscal flexibility, and major capital projects. The port also outlined aviation-related bills on fuel tax use and sustainable aviation fuels. The port shared our federal legislative updates focused on implementation of the 2024 FAA Reauthorization Act, and staff from Representatives Adam Smith and Pramila Jayapal's offices highlighted work on housing, healthcare, aviation noise, emissions, and funding for community facilities. Then the forum received a START update covering national collaboration among airport roundtables, FAA briefing on flight procedures, and START 2025 and 2026 priorities. On February 17th, Commissioners Calkins and Fellman convened the Sustainability, Environment, and Climate Committee and received briefings on port's tree replacement policy and liquefied natural gas white paper findings. On February 17th, also, Commissioners Cho and Fellman convened the Waterfront Industrial Lands Committee, where they received a preview of the Terminal 91 Uplands Redevelopment Post-Validation Contract Amendment, which is coming up for Commission action later today. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Are there any follow-up questions from the commissioners regarding the reports? Okay, we'll now continue in our agenda to the public comment portion of our meeting. The Port Commission welcomes public comment as an important part of the public process. Comments are received and considered by the Commission in its deliberations. Before we take public comment, Clerk Hart, can you please display the QR code to our public comment rules of procedure? For members of the public providing public testimony, it is essential that these rules are followed. Copies of these rules are available at the door as well. All right, Clerk Hart, you can call our, why don't we start with a virtual commenter first.
Thank you, Mr. Commission President. Give me one moment and I will get our timer up. And tell me again, did you say virtual or in person?
Yeah, let's start with Matt.
With
Virtual,
Matt?
yeah.
Okay. So I'm hoping that Matt Vantosa is on the line. He was a late sign up for the meeting today, and I think we have him by telephone. Matt, are you there? And Matt, if you're there, it's *6 to unmute. Calling again for Matt Vantosa. And we can certainly try to come back
All
to
right,
him.
yeah, let's come back to him.
Thank you. Then moving to the room, our first speaker is Michelle Gianmarco.
Hi, I'm Michelle Gianmarco, and I'm here again to comment on the closure and evictions at Salmon Bay Marina, where I remain on my houseboat. 22 days until Salmon Bay shutters, gates locked, and utilities off. With any luck, I'll be moving soon, but the reality is that 4 to 5 houseboats and their residents will remain on March 18th. At the marina closure meeting in September, I asked what will happen to houseboats that don't have slips on March 18th. In an optimistic dodge, we were told that slips would be located and it wouldn't come to that. But now it has come to that. Frankly, it's impressive that 2 houseboat slips surfaced in 5 months spanning the dead of winter, but we never found the 6 unicorns that we needed. There's still no plan, and hard questions continue to be dodged. Why does the marina become suddenly dangerous on March 18th? Transparency is an ongoing issue at Salmon Bay. I've provided an updated timeline of events there and would like to draw attention to the time between 2022 and 2024. During that time, there were 2 major inspections performed, one by port engineers, and those were used as the basis for closure of the marina. During that time, not a single tenant meeting was held. My only correspondences with the port in that 2.5-year period are mortgage statements and receipts. When we finally met in November 2024, nothing seemed amiss. We got another mortgage increase, and apparently life-threatening safety concerns were glazed over. What was being inspected? By whom? Why? What were the findings of their internal study? What were they considering? Was closure even a remote possibility? Had we been provided this information, it's unlikely we would be here today. Maybe they were in denial, maybe they couldn't have hard conversations, maybe they were afraid of losing money on a property they'd already deemed wouldn't be profitable. Only Maritime Division leadership knows why they kept it from us. Their avoidance manufactured a preventable crisis that has sent customers' lives in a tailspin. The optics of police removing people from their homes and creating derelict houseboats are bad, but so far that seems to be where we're headed. 5 months in and we're still here seeking answers and no plan. If any commissioners have information about the questions I've included, I look forward to hearing them. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Gianmarco. Clerk Hart, next speaker.
Yes, our next speaker is John Cheney. And John, please go ahead and repeat your name for the record, and I'll start the timer.
Commissioners, my name is John Cheney, and I'm here regarding the evictions from Salmon Bay Marina for floating on-water residences, especially. My partner and I are pensioners. Part of what was occurring at Salmon Bay Marina was clearly affordable housing. And soon, we don't know where our houseboat and our home will be. We have looked diligently. We are told by the Marine Division that the Marine Division has looked diligently, and we have not found new places. Yet, we're told again and again that on March 17th, 18th, whatever it is, the lights go off, the power goes off, the gates get locked, and we better not be there. I don't know what to do. This is really stressful. And I don't understand why I don't get why so much of this was hidden by the port for a long time in decision-making. And now we'll have a strategic planning effort to try and figure out what to do with the marina where you are kicking us out. I don't get it. I really do hope that the Commission will do something to help us. My other comment is, at the last meeting, you gave approval for a low-bid contract to remove trees from Matheson Park. The Mathesons and my family were close all of the time. My mother, my father, they worked together, they did community things together. I know all of the family. Those trees have embodiment of history. Giving a low-bid contract to have them cut down and just dragged off seems really tasteless and inappropriate. Why can't you save the trees and integrate them into an art project in one of your billion-dollar projects here at the airport that you're cutting them down for? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Clerk Hart, let's try Matt Ventosa again, see if he's made it.
Yes, calling for Matt Ventosa. Matt, if you're calling in, it's *6 to unmute.
Maddie.
Calling one more time for Matt Ventosa. That concludes our sign-ups today, Mr. Commission
I
President.
hope he wasn't on vacation in Mexico, because normally Matt would be here, but he did. All right, it's okay. All right, with that, that concludes our signups for today. Is there anyone else present, either on the Teams call or in the room today, who didn't sign up but who wishes to address the commission? Okay. Thank you all so much for your comments. At this time, I'll ask Clerk Hart to please give a synopsis of any written comments that we received.
Thank you, Mr. Commission President, members of the Commission, Deputy Executive Director Goon. We've received one written comment for our meeting today. Chad Pare writes to state his concern that cruise companies whose ships visit Seattle may soon try to withdraw from the voluntary agreement to pause the dumping of toxic scrubber pollution into local waters and urges the port to do everything in its power to ensure the current agreement stays in place. And that concludes the written comments we've received today.
All right, thank you, Clerk Hart. Hearing no further testimony, we're going to move on in the agenda. The next order of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and will be adopted by one motion. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered separately immediately after adoption of the remaining consent agenda items. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items covering items 8A, B, C, E, and F?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Commissioners, please say aye or nay when your name is called for approval of the consent agenda.
For a consent agenda, beginning with Commissioner Cho.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Fellerman.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hasagawa.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Mohammed.
Aye.
Thank you. And Commissioner Calkins.
Aye.
Thank you. 5 ayes, 0 nays for this item.
All right, and with that, the motion passes. Clerk Hart, can you please read item 8D, which was pulled from consent agenda, into the record? And then I'll have Deputy Executive Director Goon introduce it.
Thank you. This is agenda item 8D, authorization for the executive director to execute a lease termination agreement for the PACCAR lease agreement at SEA to facilitate their transition to Boeing Field and support SEA's airport capital development program and operations.
Thank you. Commissioners, this action allows us to thoroughly transition a valuable airfield site at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport to meet both immediate operational needs and long-term goals. PACCAR, a long-standing tenant, plans to relocate its operations in 2026. This creates an opportunity for the port to regain a highly constrained facility and associated ramp space at a critical time in SEA's growth. Joining us today is Eric Johnson. Thank you. AV Real Estate and Portfolio Manager, AV Business and Properties. He will be able to answer your questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioner, President Calkins, members of the Commission, and Deputy Executive Director Goon. My name is Eric Johnson. I'm the Aviation Real Estate and Portfolio Manager 3, responsible for the PACCAR lease agreement. My commission item today is for the early termination of the PACCAR lease agreement. This commission item will support the lease termination for PACCAR to support our growing capital development and operational needs. Today, I'll walk you through a brief presentation overviewing the lease agreement and the key terms of the lease termination agreement. Next slide. Again, next slide. So lease overview. So the PACCAR has a substantial footprint in the southern end of the airfield that can provide a critical relief valve for the airport operations. The building was constructed in 2001 by Weyerhaeuser and maintained in that leasehold until 2016, when it was then assigned to PACCAR. The building footprint is approximately 3 acres of real estate, and PACCAR has been in this location since 2016 and has been a valued customer. PACCAR understood the long-term options at Seattle were limited and have been actively exploring alternative locations and recently secured a lease at Boeing Field International. PACCAR has reached out to the port to negotiate an early termination of their agreement at Seattle, and Business and Properties has negotiated a framework for a lease termination agreement, which requires several tenant improvements to be constructed in the hangar and building, and these improvements highlight the removal of PFAS, which is the AFFF fire suppression system. This will remove the current fire code variancy from the building. It will also require a water-based fire suppression system to be installed. It'll be at a lower rating, so it won't be at the hangar rating, so the hangar will no longer be able to store aircraft inside, but it will be used for warehouse and other maintenance garage uses. In addition to this tenant improvement, the removal of the underground fueling system that supports the aircraft fueling system will be required, and the restoration of that site. In the interim, There's a multitude of different options that the port is currently exploring for the business and properties team. My job will be to help facilitate potential different options for different departments to utilize this space, either for operational improvement or for potential cost savings. In the long term, as SCA continues to grow, the port has a long-term vision that's going to help facilitate this growth, and the PACCAR site plays a critical role in that future growth. Next slide. Some key details that I want to highlight as part of this lease termination. The environmental indemnification will remain throughout the termination of this lease agreement. The monthly rental rate that will be terminated is $37,360. There are a number of tenant improvement requirements that I previously discussed. The PFAS removal, the installation of a water-based fire suppression system at a lower rating, and the removal of the underground aircraft fueling system. Some of the potential uses that we are currently exploring for this space are to support our port capital program, a potential aviation maintenance, fire department, and operational support space. If approved, the new termination date would be the month following the tenant has completed the work and the port approves the tenant improvements. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Eric, and thanks for stepping up on a last minute. Really appreciate your preparedness there. All right, commissioners, can I have a motion and a second to for authorization?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on agenda item 8D? Commissioner Pellman.
Thank you, and my apologies for not giving you more heads up on that, but I knew you had done all the hard work to get the presentation together, but
Appreciate that.
I've been following the PACCAR lease for many years, and I've been distressed by the way in which the fire department has not been able to be treated fairly during this time, and so I'm very much making sure that they're not getting any great sweetheart deal, because I don't think they earned it, and the rate has been very, I think, quality benefit to them. So I am intrigued, though, that these additional expenses that they are going to incur if this goes forward were not initially part of the responsibility of cleaning up the site before they leave it. They've been there since 2016, right?
Yes, that's correct. So the lease agreement does require at the termination of the agreement for PACCAR to demolish the building. The port has elected to go in a different direction because of the varying potential uses for this space and the overall support for our capital program or operational efficiencies. And just given the constraints and the anticipated projects that are coming to fruition here in Seattle, we felt like it was a lot more appropriate to maintain this critical real estate and this function of this building to support our overall goals. But PACCAR would have been required to demolish all of these items and remove the PFAS system as part of their lease agreement if we had continued with the agreement and it terminated.
So I'm delighted that we'd be able to use this building, which is the other thing I was hoping we'd get the fire department actually being able to make use of that before they built their alternative facility. But so there's $1.5 million that they're not going to incur, right? And then cleaning up PFAS is, I would imagine, extraordinarily expensive.
Yes. Not the expert on it, but from talking to experts, it's a very complicated and challenging process. A lot of the hazardous materials has to be transported off-site in secure transportation methods. So it is a very encumbersome process for them to remove that equipment and dispose of it safely because it is not allowed to be disposed into our IWS system.
And so they're still responsible for doing that, but that was already an obligation. So there's no new expense to them.
At the end of the lease agreement, they would have been required to terminate this or to tear down this building. That is correct. So that would have been a cost that they would incur at the end of the lease agreement.
And we're going to lose $2 million by this early departure. We get the benefit of the space, but, so they're getting $2 million to leave early, and the $1.5 million that they don't have to demolish the building, right?
Yes, the cost of the improvements have equaled out to what it would have cost to demolish the building. The lease termination early would have allowed them to get out of the lease early, but the value of the real estate and the building footprint outweighs those costs of losing the potential revenue from continuing this lease agreement to the end of the termination date. And we've really explored a multitude of different options to offset this cost balance with utilizing this space to support our capital programs or operations. So the overall calculation shows a much more positive revenue outlook for the port by continuing to maintain this building footprint and to requiring all of these additional tenant improvements to the space to make it usable not only for the immediate needs, but also for our long-term needs. It'll extend the useful life of the building for more than 5 years. And depending on how our future vision shakes out, it could continue to provide a significant potential revenue source for us and cost benefit.
So the tenant improvements, the inside assets, they were supposed to knock it down. So these are the new expenses.
Yes, so the water suppression system is not something that they would have had to incur if they were to just demolish the building. So the water suppression system is a new water suppression system, water-based, that is environmental compliant and provides the same capabilities outside of, it is a lower grade from an aircraft rated hangar to a maintenance and warehouse building. So it does provide those values, and that is something addition that PACCAR is doing.
So is that the only improvement that their new expense?
Yes.
And that's valued at?
I don't have the numbers for that right now.
So anyway, I'm just trying to figure, I understand the value to us, but I'm just trying to understand what they're getting out of it. And so $2 million from the lease, right? The cleanup of the PFAS, right?
So the lease termination is a $2 million revenue reduction for the port over the life of the lease. And then there is a $1.5 million estimated demolition cost that we've calculated. So essentially, PACCAR is responsible for that $1.5 million demolition cost through the tenant improvements that are being done. But the $2 million we feel can be captured in other different lines of business or support of port projects. So the $1.5 million is something that PACCAR is paying for, but through the tenant improvement process.
And just the last thing. So you can't clean up the PFAS unless you knock down the building, right?
No.
You can get to it. And the storage tanks, though, that remediation you can't get to until you knock down the building? Or is that separate?
No, the underground storage tank is tied to the aviation fueling system, so that's not located within the building and can be remediated on site. The PFAS system is able to be removed from the building, and I know other buildings have done it on the airfield here. So you can get access to the PFAS system and all the associated components, remove them, dispose of them properly, and then install a new water-based fire suppression system.
So they're not released from the lease until the cleanup is complete and the suppression system's in place?
Yep.
And so that's the thing. And I understand it's got heated floors. Is that true?
I don't know
I
that.
think the planes like the heated floors. All right, anyway.
I will
thank you.
also comment that the other component is the environmental indemnification does continue throughout the termination. So when we do tear down the building, if we do tear down the building, if there is any environmental contamination, we do have some indemnification for that potential.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Cho?
Was the building there prior to PACCAR leasing the property?
Yes, the building was built by Weyerhaeuser in 2001, and PACCAR assumed the lease in 2016.
So they didn't incur any cost to actually building the facility when they took it over?
No, they did not. That would have been by Weyerhaeuser.
Okay. The other question that I had for you was, why are we doing this?
Well, there's a lot of space-constrained real estate here in Seattle, and we're looking for every opportunity to improve operational efficiency and to support our overall project development, especially with mega projects like SCE coming around the corner. For us, there is a lot of potential disruptions that the airport's going to see, so ensuring that we have this real estate to support kind of those future impacts and future growth will provide an immense relief valve to an extremely constrained environment that we're operating in.
But I recall in your presentation to me just a few minutes ago, when you mentioned interim use, you said you're still evaluating it.
Yes.
So you don't actually have an interim use.
We do have a couple identified internal departments that are interested in the space, as well as our projects. It's a challenge in terms of ciphering out what the best use is, whether it's for internal operational efficiency or whether it's for cost reductions in terms of our capital programs. There's a multitude of different avenues we could go depending on what the port values as the most critical to the overall operation.
But meanwhile, we're foregoing $37,000 in monthly revenue.
Yes.
Why?
Because we have between now and when this would go into effect, which would be, we're anticipating October of 2026. So we have several months to work out all of those details about what the interim use will be, what the duration and space requirements are for that interim use. And then as well, looking at the long-term plan in terms of after October, again, anticipated October, whenever they're done with their tenant improvements, they can then use that space. So whether that's internal use for port departments or whether that's to support our capital programs, we have some time.
So let me understand this timeline correctly. You're asking us to vote on this today so that we can receive the property back in October?
Yes, apologies if I didn't make that clear. The agreement today is to authorize the lease termination agreement. The specific requirements of that are for the tenant to vacate the premises, which is anticipated to be in April. And then after that, they have to do their tenant work that's prescribed with the PFAS removal, the water installation, and the underground fueling system that needs to be removed. That is anticipated to take several months. And so between PACCAR vacating, which is anticipated again to be around March and April, once their new hangar lease is secured at BFI, they'll move their operations over there and then start their project work to renovate the building, during which time they will be paying their lease rental rate. Up until the time where their tenant work is completed, the port has approved it, then at that moment, the following month, they would be released from their rent obligations.
Did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add with, Rick Duncan, Director of Aviation Business and Properties. So we do have a list of uses of different port groups that would like to use this facility. And it's probably going to end up being a shared use with multiple ones. So the fire department will probably take some of it for storage. The SCE construction group will probably use it. And if we could even save just a small fraction of a % in construction cost of SCE by being able to provide space, it would more than make up for the lost revenue. And so we, when we had PACCAR's lease kind of, in the sight of being terminated, or should I say expired, we talked to them and said, hey, we know it's difficult to find a hangar in the Puget Sound area of your needs. We provided them the opportunity, hey, if you find an option, come talk to us and let's look at what choices we have, because we could use that facility for our needs today. I mean,
I guess the only reason I keep asking these questions is because, or this line of questioning is because usually when you break a lease, there's a penalty involved. I'm not seeing a penalty here, right? You're telling me that they got to get rid of PFAS, which would have had to have been done regardless if they at the end of their lease. So, normally if you break a lease, you have to pay what's remaining on the lease, which is not happening here. And so I just like, as much as I appreciate that we need the 3 acres and there's alternative uses to it, which I believe, right? They just get to walk away?
There is the investment of the water suppression system, which is a sizable investment.
Like, what are we talking here?
I don't have the exact numbers. I can
Is it
get that to you.
$2.4 million? Because that's how much we're losing in revenue.
I can't speak to that. I would imagine it's not quite 2.4 million, but again, I don't have those numbers in front of me.
I mean, I would say the benefit is to us more than it's a punishment to them. It's a new facility that we otherwise wouldn't be able to take advantage of.
But they came to us for the breaking of the lease. They asked us for it. Or did we initiate it?
We have, it's just in our general conversations with tenants, we talk about, lease exterminations coming up in a few years, and we just talk about what the plans are. And when we told them, after your lease expires, you have no future here at SEA, then we brought on, okay, so what's the wind down going to look like? And so they brought it to us with us warning them that there's no future. And we want to be partners with all of our tenants. And if something like that is happening, let's talk about, what that would look like and what the off-ramp would be. And knowing that, the day of lease expiration, there may not be another hangar in the Puget Sound area for them, we want to be good partners with everyone, especially if, they have to leave our airport.
I'm going to ask Commissioner Mohammed if she has any questions.
No, thank you.
All right. My thoughts on this, and maybe because when I first started as a commissioner, we had a conversation with I think with Lance Little at the time, about this property. And my understanding of this is that it is an outlier. It is a general aviation facility at an airport that does not do general aviation. It really does fit the ecosystem of BFI much more. What they do is more appropriate there. We have long since outgrown general aviation, and quite honestly, we were ready to move these folks as soon as possible. It just wasn't possible because they had a lease. And the opportunity came up, encouraged by the port to make this move a little bit early. It sounds like you guys have negotiated a really good arrangement to ensure that it's done in a way that meets our environmental values and needs and statutory requirements, and also then allows us to, it sounds to me like, save a lot of money in being able to use our property for our uses internally instead of having to go find other property off-site to accommodate construction projects or other internal uses, the needs of our fire department. I'm wholeheartedly in support of this. I think it's a great plan, and I'm grateful for that collegial relationship you've had with tenants so that you could broach this in a way that would get to a win-win outcome, and so I support it. Any other thoughts or comments? Commissioner Fellman.
I believe there was one other provision that was not just about the 2031 extinction of the lease. It was if we pulled a permit for SAMP or something like that, they had to go, right? It was like a short notice, once we start, you're out of here. To your point, we're not a general aviation airport, and we certainly are giving them a sweetheart deal right now. So so it's not like they were guaranteed to have the whole lease. And so I just guess I'm just, like I said, I fully appreciate it's more valuable to us, right? And if they have another place to go, that's great. But to Commissioner Cho's point, I mean, it would have been good to know what is the value of the water suppression so that we could use it for these other purposes to be in code and all that. It's probably close. I mean, I would guess. And as long as they retain the liability for the pollution, which is always worse than you estimate, then I think it's probably a good thing. But
And I want to give the microphone to Airport Managing Director Wendy Ryder for a last comment.
Thank you, Managing Director Wendy Ryder. We are in just the first phases of looking at transitioning PFAS in hangars. So that's why we were kind of not quite sure what the cost is. However, we are transitioning at the rental car facility, and it's running between $5 to $7 million. So that's just a just cost of what we think it's going to cost for hangars. So I did want to let you know that probably around the $7 million in the hangars, we believe. So I just wanted to let you know it's about that.
Thank you for that. Data point 2. Clerk Hart, can you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Beginning with Commissioner Cho.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Fellman.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Hasagawa.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Mohammed.
Aye.
Thank you, and Commissioner Calkins.
Aye.
Thank you. 5 ayes, 0 nays for this item.
And with that, the motion passes. We have 2 new business items today. Clerk Hart, can you please read the first item into the record? Deputy Executive Director Goon will then introduce it.
Yes, this is Agenda Item 10A, authorization for the Executive Director to approve funding to execute a post-validation amendment to the Progressive Design Build contract for the T91 Uplands Development Program to further advance design, complete the development and negotiation of a guaranteed maximum price contract for construction, and retain the option to perform early work and procure long lead items in the requested amount of $36,200,000 for a total estimated project cost of $131 million.
Commissioners, today we are seeking authorization to advance the Terminal 91 Uplands development into the next phase of design and toward negotiation of a guaranteed maximum price for construction. Phase 1 will deliver approximately 111,000 square feet of modern light industrial space and supporting infrastructure at the northeast portion of Terminal 91, setting the stage for the port to directly respond to strong tenant demand and the shortage of industrial space in the Ballard Inner Bay Manufacturing and Industrial Center. This project preserves and strengthens our fishing and maritime clusters by keeping processing, logistics, and innovation businesses in near proximity with vessel operations at Piers 90 and 91. The requested funding advances design, permitting, and guaranteed maximum price development while maintaining flexibility for early work and long lead procurement. Construction authorization will return to the Commission once negotiations are complete. This investment modernizing aging facilities expands revenue generating capacity and represents a strategic step in delivering on our long-term vision for Terminal 91. Joining us today is, a whole cast of characters, so I'll let them introduce themselves.
Thank you, Deputy Executive Director Goon. I'm Stephanie Jones-Stebbins, Managing Director of the Maritime Division, and I'm here with the extremely capable project team and project sponsor. I'm going to say a couple words in introduction because this is a very important project that also has some far-ranging consequences to our overall capital program. We're here to seek approval, as Deputy Executive Director Goon said, for the next phase of our work on this project. It's a really critical project to support the maritime industrial industry. This is space that's necessary to support the industry, and it's a type of space that's rapidly disappearing in our region, right? It's necessary not only to support our existing businesses, but a really critical element of achieving a Teal New Deal as well. So staff really believes this is an important project to move forward. At the same time, it has really important consequences to our overall capital plan. As we've done more investigation into the subsurface conditions at the site and looked at overall construction, the project estimates have gone up. At the same time, we see overall the rest of our capital program has also increased. So if we look at in order to really responsibly come to you with a recommendation to move forward within our overall capital constraints, we had to make some adjustments to our capital plan. And in fact, we have deferred two pretty significant projects in order to bring this whole program in within our capital program. We have deferred the Northwest Docks at Fisherman's Terminal, and we've deferred the Harbor-Wide Mooring Dolphins project. And we'll be using most of our reserves or contingency would also be dedicated already be spoken for the next 5 years. So we think we recommend moving forward with this project, and we want to make sure that we're very transparent about the overall capital situation of the Maritime Division. I also want to be clear that we're asking for not the entire thing today, but money to move forward with design, long lead items, and about half of today's authorization is demolition of some buildings on the 91 Uplands that have been vacant for some time, and the port has to deal with those. They're not safe to leave standing there. So much of this is money we would have to spend anyway. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to our outstanding project team, and I'm going to turn it first to Kiralise.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Executive Deputy Executive Director Goon, and Commissioners. I am Kira Leese. I'm the Port of Seattle's Director of Real Estate Development and Economic Development. The T91 project that we're bringing to you today, or for the additional funds to complete the design development, is on the heels of our ongoing commitment to protecting and encouraging investment in our industrial lands. That has been a prime driver of our policy decisions. This is the part where we actually make investments that spur other investments. And that's really the theme that I'm going to bring as the economic development representative and sponsor of this project today. We will be back with you for authorization for construction down the line. And with that, let's proceed with this presentation. So next slide. As Director John Stebbins mentioned, this is asking for your authorization for the executive director to improve funding for a post-validation amendment to our progressive design build contract for the T91 Uplands Development Program. To complete the advanced design past its point today, to allow for the development of a negotiated guaranteed maximum price so that when we do come for construction authorization, we will have a firm price with our contract team, to perform early work and procurement of long lead items, and the total request for this action today is $36,200,000 for a total to date project authorization of $46,300,000. Next slide, please. The Port is an economic development agency, and the vision and purpose of the T91 Uplands project is to make real our commitments to improving opportunities for investment, to supporting job creation and retention, for improving economic outcomes for enterprise and spur employment opportunities on our properties. We are one of the largest, if not the largest, landlord and landowner in the industrial lands, particularly in the Ballard Interbay Manufacturing and Industrial District. And we have, with moving on this project, a long time in coming, potentially as long as 30 years. We have envisioned the redevelopment of the uplands, and today we're talking about building 3 new light industrial buildings. The first maritime investment that's been made by anybody, if you don't count our current investment in the Maritime Innovation Center currently under construction at Fisherman's Terminal. To address the shortage of leasable light industrial space for maritime in particular. So this project has been designed after considerable investment into understanding what the needs of our maritime industry partners are. So it retains some design features that are specific to that set of industry needs. To demonstrate our ongoing support for Seattle's industrial lands policy and to retain port-dependent maritime tenants currently at Piers 90 and 91. A lot of the buildings that are there today have been there for many, many years and are well past their useful life. Modernizing their space increases productivity and highlights the opportunity for investing by others for additional phases of development, which we will also be able to engage with further design here. As though we're contemplating today full design for buildings, we also have the opportunity to provide development pads for further phases in adjacent properties or adjacent sites to this development. And as Director John Stebbins acknowledged, a good deal of what we would be investing in is to demolish obsolete warehouse space at T91, which then again will allow us to envision how that land left behind will be used. I want to just acknowledge that what progressive design build has allowed us to do in this facet of the redevelopment of the uplands is to engage a broad stakeholder group, not only with our excellent contractor team, architects Methune and construction team Hoffman, but across the port, what progressive design build means And the reason you have so many people up here reflecting maybe the dozens of port employees that have been able to comment on how we're working with this property and make sure that those subsurface conditions and difficult construction situation are fully acknowledged, that when we get to a guaranteed maximum price, we know what we're getting into. We don't come back to you for further funding. So it's been great to work with this fantastic team. And let's go to the next slide, please. Yes, and I'm going to turn it over to our project manager, Evan Conroy, to talk more about the specifics of this project.
Hi, I'm Evan Conroy. Thank you, Executive Director Goon and commissioners. I'm going to talk a little bit about the scope and cost breakdown for the project in this request. First, here we can see the overall location of the project on Terminal 91 with 3 general scopes and areas of work. Phase 1 on the far left, which is the northernmost part of the site. Then immediately next to that is a potential pad-ready component that Kira was just mentioning. And finally, at the far right, or the southern end of the uplands near the Magnolia Bridge, is the demolition of several buildings. We'll go into more detail in the next slide. Next slide, please. So on this slide, we see the baseline scope a little more in detail that make up the entire program. Just to start off, phase 1, the scope is about 111,000 square feet of maritime-focused light industrial warehouse space, currently broken into 3 proposed buildings of varying size. These are designed in such a way that they can accommodate a variety of leasing spaces and allow for future leasing flexibility. The proposed arrangement is seen in the black and white plan diagram with a shared center staging area, parking, and space for building systems. Associated with this is the next line, Phase 1 site, which includes all of the infrastructure, utilities, site improvements, stormwater management, and paving to support these buildings. This also includes industrial best practices for safe movement of trucks, other vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles. Next, there's the south building demo near the Magnolia Bridge. This includes the demolition of W39, which is attached to the bridge, M28, and M19. Finally, at the bottom is the Phase 2 pad ready. This scope is separated a little from the others because the request is for design funding will be used with a narrow focus to aid in negotiations with a prospective ground lease. Next slide, please. This next series of visuals will briefly focus on Phase 1 and the proposed buildings. So here, the proposed building footprints are outlined in orange at the north end of the terminal. You can see the 3 buildings of different sizes and kind of how they relate to the rest of the site. Next slide. This rendering shows a view from the south end of the site looking north with the shared central staging area in the middle. As you can see, there's 3 different warehouses there. Next slide. This close-up of one of the proposed buildings shows some of the potential character of the facade with large openings and some shared building utilities and common spaces in the lower volume on the left. Next slide, please. And finally, this last rendering again shows the central staging area surrounded by the 3 buildings. Just a different nighttime view, dusk. Next slide, please. Moving south, this slide shows in more detail the 3 buildings to be demolished. As you can see, there are 2 smaller buildings, M19 and W28, that will come down, with M39 being the largest and the most challenging because of its adjacency to the Magnolia Bridge. The building has an apron that directly abuts this bridge. This building also has extensive asbestos mastic on the walls that needs to be scraped off, and abated prior to demolition. Next slide. So with this slide, we're going to change gears a little bit and talk about the cost breakdown. So you can see there are a lot of numbers up here in several categories. So to start, I'd like to draw your attention to the bottom of the middle column to highlight the overall request today for $36,200,000. With that, you'll notice that a very large portion, nearly half the request, as we mentioned earlier, is the design and construction funding request for the south building demolition at just over $17 million. And of that, nearly half of that is the asbestos abatement I just mentioned on the previous slide. The other significant portion of this request is for the design of Phase 1, as well as about $5 million for potential early work and long lead items like electrical and HVAC equipment. We're asking for this now to help lock in our schedule and some costs now to mitigate an extended schedule due to potential procurement issues that would also add costs through general conditions at the end of the project. Finally, in the lower right, you can see the total program cost is about $131 million. This is based on the target GMP from the validation phase given to us by the PDB team, so our construction and design teams. It includes our risk register, contingencies, and port soft costs. So that's total program cost. Below that is the project cost of phase 1 at $111 million. Phase 2 pad ready is shown with just the design portion at this time. And then finally, you could see the entire project cost for the demo at about $18,100,000. Next slide.
Thank you for that, Evan. Good afternoon, Commissioners and Deputy Executive Director Karen Goon. My name is Tim Nguyen. I'm the Chief Development Officer for the Maritime Division, and I have the pleasure of discussing financial analysis with you today. So for just the phase 1 development, we are forecasting a rate of return of negative 0.4%. The current net present value is negative $78 million, a change from a negative $58 million that we last presented to you in October of 2023. As a reminder, net present value helps us compare the financial costs and benefits of a project over its life by accounting for the fact that money today is more certain and valuable than money in the future. We adjust or discount future cash flows using a discount rate that is a combination of the port's cost of capital and risk premium for the project. Although we are modeling incremental income of approximately $2 million per year at stabilization, the large upfront costs to construct this phase of development will take more than 30 years to pay back. We are assuming stabilization at 90% tenant occupancy and have included only incremental expenses for property management and maintenance of phase 1 in our financial model. With that said, we would characterize the negative returns for phase 1 as a down payment for phase 2 development, which we believe will have a better return on investment. How better? TBD once we are further along with our ground lease negotiations. Given we are early on project definition and ground lease negotiations for phase 2, we have not included this phase in our financial analysis. As noted in the previous slide, today's authorization request includes only limited design costs for phase 2, and we'll be back seeking additional authorization from you in the future for phase 2, pad ready construction, pending our ground lease negotiations. Next slide, please. And Stephanie alluded to this, but I want to cover this in a lot more detail for you. Last year in the plan of finance we presented to you, we allocated a total of $67 million for this redevelopment effort. The latest cost estimate post-validation with our progressive design builder is $131 million, not including the construction costs for phase 2. Although we are early in the project's life cycle, and the $131 million cost estimate will likely change as we progress further with design development and GMP negotiations, it presents an initial delta of $64 million to cover in our CIP. In addition, our latest CIP quarterly cash flow update, which we wrapped up earlier this month, resulted in a net increase of $41 million versus last year's plan of finance due to more scope definition and revised cost estimates for a handful of newer projects that we added last year. To mitigate these impacts, we rebalanced our 5-year CIP by deferring the Fisherman's Terminal Northwest Dock Improvement Project, pausing the Harbor Mooring Dolphin Project, and allocating only design costs for phase 2 into the CIP while we are negotiating the future ground lease. In addition, we carry a $55 million management reserve in the CIP that we will reallocate to balance the funding shortfall within this 5-year window. Doing so means we are limiting optionality with future capital investments, and any new large projects that we will propose into the CIP during this 5-year period will necessitate reprioritization against existing projects to ensure we stay within our funding capacity. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll hand it back to Evan to close us out. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. I'm going to talk about high-level schedule, and then the next slide will dive into some project risks we've identified and how we intend to mitigate those risks as best we can. So first, here with the schedule slide, starts with today's meeting and request. After that, if approved to proceed, the team will start the design and GMP development phase in this quarter that will last through about the end of the year into Q4 of 2026. During that time, we'll be going to the Sea-Tac committee in Q2 of this year, with our sustainability initiatives. After a brief period a brief design period for the demolition, we anticipate starting the actual demo later this year in Q3 that will last about a year. The largest part of that long duration is the asbestos abatement and potential complexity with the adjacent Magnolia Bridge for that larger building. In parallel to that, we anticipate coming back to you back before you for construction authorization of phase 1 at the end of this year in Q4. This happens once enough design has been done to establish a final GMP. Finally, construction for phase 1 would start at the beginning of 2027 and go into the start of 2028. Construction of phase 2 would follow if ground lease negotiations permit. Next slide, please. So on this slide, I'm going to quickly go through what's a lot of words on here. Risks we've identified and how we intend to mitigate some of these risks. But I want to take a step back. It's also worth noting that, again, it has been mentioned, this project is a progressive design build project, and that's important for a number of reasons. But perhaps the most important aspect are that we selected a design and construction team that we will work with as an active partner throughout this project. And we've been doing that now for the last year almost. And that means we are jointly identifying and managing these risks on a risk register and working to identify costs for better certainty. So with that, I'll jump into the first risk. So the first one is tying into existing infrastructure. So the project team has made certain assumptions about connecting to existing systems that may change before the project is complete. And to mitigate this, the progressive design build validation phase and internal testing has identified potential issues that are being tracked for this project in additional capital projects, as well as on our risk register, which allocates a certain amount of dollars to those risks. The next is the unknown site conditions. As you may know, this site is full of abandoned foundations and utilities that can impact construction timelines and cost. Again, partnering with our design build team at the start of this project allows for validation of the site to better understand what is in the ground, and this information is then incorporated into the schedule and the target GMP, and then ultimately the final GMP for better cost certainty. Next is permitting time. Permit delays may impact schedule and cost. So again, with this PDP delivery approach, it allows for early collaboration on design and permitting to the extent feasible. The next, coordination with other projects and seasonal demands at Terminal 91. There are many other projects scheduled on the terminal with similar timelines that may impact construction. As we know, it's a very active site overall with various industries impacting certain areas more at certain times of the year. To mitigate this and to help with coordination, a communication consultant will be engaged to communicate ongoing and upcoming construction work, not just from our side, but also all projects and tenants on the terminal. The next one, another risk is always presented, but even more relevant now, is supply chain uncertainty. So supply chain logistics could delay project delivery. Tariffs could impact our ability to procure long lead items and create uncertainty in pricing. To mitigate this, a cost contingency was added to our risk register to account for potential tariff price increases or impacts. Additionally, we propose the early procurement of long lead equipment, and that is the $5 million I kind of mentioned earlier on the cost breakdown slide. And finally, the demolition of W39 is identified as a potential risk. As I mentioned, this building abuts the Magnolia Bridge and has significant abatement effort attached to it. And to mitigate this, we will continue to engage SDOT early to align our expectations and mitigate any approval delays. Also, additional coordination and work regarding the Magnolia Bridge railing is identified in our risk register and allocated an amount of money to help cover unforeseen costs associated with that. And that's the end of this part. Next slide, please.
We're now prepared to entertain your questions in anticipation of a positive vote.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Felleman first.
Thank you, and thank you for a very complicated project that's been long awaited. I mean, since my tenure, I first got briefed on it in 2016, so it's something I'm very supportive of seeing move forward. I still have very much concerns about how much of the opportunity cost it poses, especially given how much uncertainty still exists. And so I am also concerned that we don't really have a tenant in hand, right? So this is build it, you will come. We have tenants that have expressed interest that are existing tenants, but nobody's really signed up, right?
Yeah, this is a speculative project. It's the term of art here, a spec project, meaning that there are no identified specific tenants. Working with Jennifer Mayetta and the Maritime Asset Management team, we have been meeting with existing tenants at T91 to understand their needs and interests as it pertains to their potential occupancy. And there's a lot of positive response to being in modern space. Their entire livelihood is based at T91, and they have no plans to move otherwise. It's also important to note that the buildings that these tenants are in today are well past their useful life, and in that way are somewhat vulnerable to any kind of implications, challenges to that space's utility currently. So this is a good move for them, if you will. Is traditional and industrial development. Industrial space is a commodity in the market that you really, unless you have a build-to-suit opportunity to build specifically for a specific use, it's generally done in spec, knowing what the overall industrial needs are in that sector. And we have well researched the market needs for particularly maritime tenants that are of particular interest to us for this. And I dare say, without putting words in her mouth, I think both Jennifer Mayetta and I feel very positive that we will have good occupancy early on. And even by authorizing this and putting it on a construction timetable enhances the marketability of this project. And then there are larger developers that have interest in T91. And I think encouraging those potential redevelopment opportunities is also a big aim here, where if we were, for instance, to come for phase 2 on the heels of this, we will have a signed tenant and it will remarkably change the material outcome financially for the project area as a whole.
And may I just add one thing to that, Commissioner? One of the things about these particular developments is the spaces will be demisable down to quite small areas. So we're really looking to serve not necessarily one large tenant as we might do with the ground lease, but really the many different smaller companies that make up the maritime industry. So as we move forward from here, we will have more certainty to be able to market more clearly. But I think that type of user that we're targeting is partially, I think, why we are not able to, for instance, lease the whole thing at this point until we get a little more
I think
certainty.
the generic design lends itself to that flexibility, and when I say generic, it also amazingly attractive for a warehouse, right? So it's I appreciate the fact that flexibility would be able to give you ability to draw different tenants. But the estimate has gone from 67 million to 131 million, and that's just phase 1?
Well, that 130 also includes the demolition for the southern portion that we discussed at some length here. That is all the construction for phase 1 and site complement. The extensive excavation under increasingly known subsurface conditions, utility upgrades. Utility upgrades not just because the utilities are old, but also looking at our contemporary standards for utilities. Not just what the permit officials want, but I think what the Port of Seattle wants has, yes, juiced the price.
Higher. We're all about electrification, so I'm sure we want to have it overbuilt.
And just a clarification, actually, I'll let Tin actually address. The cost estimate has gone up, but not quite that much.
Yes, Commissioner. So it's been fairly stable. It has gone up. And why we plugged, if you looked at the 67 million number, you'll see a plug number of 50 million for phase one. The reason we went with a plug number of 50 million, at that point, we were in the validation period and we only had a draft report. We always knew it's going to be a lot more than that. But we plugged 50 million because financially, what we were targeting was what would it take to have an NPV 0, or essentially a project that would possibly be positive. And at 50 million for phase one, that would be an NPV 0 project. So ultimately, we would be covering our hurdle rate or our cost of capital plus the risk premium. And for this financial analysis, we did about an 8.5%. So 5.5 for cost of capital, 3% for a risk premium. So ultimately, we plugged 50 million in, knowing that it probably will end up being more. And one way we accommodated for that was that we upped our management reserves. So one of the things that you'll see in a plan of finance, if you looked at the pie chart that we normally share every year, you'll see that this year, the management reserves was set at 9%. In the previous year, the management reserve was only 5%. So some of that management reserve have been allocated for the potential, knowing that this is going to be over 50 million. But during capital planning, we were also worried about other investments that we would have to make and how best to reshuffle our CIP. Hence why it was better for us to go ahead and allocate it within our management reserve to be decided later. And you can see we've already taken some actions on how to reprioritize that management reserve.
Well, you go into my second concern. Yep. Well, certainly there's still uncertainties associated with site conditions and new earthquake codes and liquefaction zones and abatements, all these things that are nightmares to forecast. But it's the opportunity cost that really is, given those uncertainty, that's most concerning to me. And without having had the benefit of our latest retreat to talk about what our expected revenues from whether we change the tax base or not, and what are the projects we want to prioritize. You know, the ones that are identified that are delayed on the CIP don't include all the things that, you know, I see moments of opportunity here, whether it be Federal Center South and federal transfers of property or WASCA state transfers of property. If we have no dry powder to bring to the conversation, you know, those that do will have the lead on the conversation, and we can see incompatible uses brought to our backyard, where I think there's a lot of interest, maybe not just in the maritime interest. So I'm very concerned that we would have no ability to assert ourselves and losing, you know, absorbing like the whole, reserve is, you know, for 5 years. It's a big gulp. I mean, personally, I would prefer us having a chance to deliberate amongst ourselves at a retreat with this squarely in front of us and talk about how best to move forward. You know, in the alternative, I would say those buildings have to come down anyway, and there's unknown costs associated with just doing that. You know, if taking half this budget, $18 million to touching the Magnolia Bridge scares the heck out of me. I mean, the communities are going to tell us to build a new bridge, right? So, but any sort of ability to surgically remove that, I would like to see those expenses defined and not see any opportunity costs other than delay by just doing demo. That's where I'm coming from right now.
Okay, a couple of quick questions. The NPV that you established for this, that factors the costs of demolition, remediation into the NPV for the new buildings?
No, so the NPV analysis that's presented to you right now only includes phase one for an apple-to-apple comparison. So the demo of the building south is a cost that we already are going to have to incur, and so we did not factor that demolition cost into the phase one. There is no demolition in phase one.
Okay, and then, Kira, maybe you could share a little bit about the type of tenant that we're hoping. I'm trying to understand likelihood of tenancy quickly. And one of my concerns is that there are parts of our market that are really soft right now. I think of T105 every time I drive by.
T106.
T106, sorry.
Yeah.
It breaks my heart. But that is because it's associated with a line of business that right now is very soft. My concern is that if we keep putting eggs into that basket, for instance, I think our NPV is even optimistic at the rate we're at right now. So tell me about the type of tenant we're thinking here. And as a part of that, the building that abuts the bridge, if I remember correctly, is historically a cold storage building.
Correct.
I know that that market has been fairly strong. Did we think about replacing cold storage capacity in any of this space at the T91 Uplands?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, for your question. So just in terms of your question about who do we imagine the tenants for the T91 Phase 1 spec project will be, it's, as I alluded to, we did a great deal of market analysis looking at maritime tenants, which are the ones that have been vulnerable to losing space. And when we did the strategic plan in 2016, it was, that's 10 years ago now, acknowledging that the kinds of spaces that our maritime tenants need, which are quite different actually, to jump a little bit ahead into your question about the T106 warehouse, which was done by Tuamaquo, which is a 735,000 square feet logistics center built specifically for the logistics industry. They're being extremely picky about who their tenant is there. They've had many prospects. Fortunately, we're not awaiting rent from that ground lease. We get it already, and they're not nervous about it. I mean, I'm sure they would have been happy to lease it day one, but they're awaiting the ideal tenant or set of tenants for that property.
Okay, that's good to know. I appreciate that. I won't fret so much every time I drive.
So we anticipate a mix of our existing tenants at T91, which have already been spoken to. And then if you think about the Pacific Expo that we host every year, those are the kinds of tenants that and in fact, that's a little bit like shooting fish in the barrel, no pun intended, to go to that meeting. And we have talked extensively to those folks that attend. Those are the kinds of tenants that we're anticipating that don't have new space today. We have ongoing set of relationships with the fishing and maritime industry, and they often provoke questions. When is T91 coming? I think we've been working on it so long, there's a healthy amount of skepticism. So I think were we to say, here's the quarter it's going to be delivered, I think we will have many prospects. And what Director John Stebbins alluded to, the small demising potential for this space is really what we designed it for. Maximum flexibility, yes, so that we can have an ongoing series of tenants coming through these properties at different sizes and variances. But also, that's what they need, the smaller space. And it's quite unusual to find that. That's not just sublease leftover space in the market. So while there has been a general dip from the kind of peak that we saw a couple of years ago during the pandemic when industrial was a hot commodity and still is in many areas. As you know, we're continuing to build around the airport with our Des Moines Creek West project, also 100% spec. That's going very well. So I think we've designed it with enough target that we should not be too nervous. We should have tenants for this building in short order, and we'll know more when we come to you for construction authorization.
Is the rail yard an attribute, or is it not really set up to function as a potential means of distribution of goods that are produced there?
What's lovely about rail service, like what we see next door to T91, is it can be activated quite easily in the event that we have a tenant that would prefer to use rail service for delivery.
Just one more comment, and then I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Hasegawa. A part of the vision in this Interbay ecosystem is that this will be the sort of second phase, the adolescence for some businesses that are gestated at the Maritime Innovation Center. And so I think our timing is good. We're, turning over the keys, I think, to Maritime Innovation Center to our
Very short order,
anchor
yes.
tenant here soon. They're going to be doing the kind of incubation gestation period with some of these ocean economy businesses, and we want to give them a more lasting home if available. And we have heard, commercial affordability is a problem for businesses. So I do think part of my consideration, you look at the bleak numbers we look at for the NPV on phase one, and a private equity investor would say, no thanks. But that's not what we are. We're a public agency interested in the overall economic activity and supporting our maritime ecosystem. And so while I don't want to be cash flow negative, I recognize that we represent patient capital for the sustenance of a larger ecosystem that is in fact part of a robust economic base for the entire region. Some of those revenues we don't get to count on our balance sheet. And so I think that is important to reflect. So I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Hasegawa for her question.
I'm just going to keep my my 3 questions short. My first is sort of building off of the comments of Commissioner Felleman about potential impacts on the bridge. What are we thinking in terms of mitigating any sort of community or, commute or mobility impacts?
I'll start, and then you may have to finish this one. We are already in conversations with SDOT about this potential challenge, and so our Hoffman, our construction team, as well as our designer, kind of looking at what we're in for there. We have extensive community engagement with the Magnolia community through our NAC group that we meet with routinely every month to discuss impacts and have had many presentations on the T91 project. So we expect to keep that going. I don't know if there's more we can say about the engineering capacity for this. We're not, the bridge and the building do have some kind of a symbiotic relationship. And as we go further in the demolition design, we will understand and acknowledge what the engineering realities are for that project to ensure that it doesn't interfere with the workings of the current Magnolia Bridge setup.
Okay, thanks.
I don't know if there's more to.
All right, at this point.
No, I've got 2 more questions.
Sorry, go ahead.
So we have goals in terms of energy use and carbon emissions reductions, and it's going to put extreme demand on the same footprint. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how this impacts some of our energy use goals and any sort of relationship that we're supposed to have with Puget Sound Energy or City Light in putting such a large operation on this footprint.
Yeah, I've got good news there. I mean, the existing estimates for what it's going to cost from an electrical standpoint to operate the 110,000 square feet for phase one is well within what we're currently using. We also have additional capacity that's represented by those 3 buildings to the south that will be taken down that we're accounting for some of the electrical service needs. So we think this is an upgrade and, of course, a modernized facilities with their materiality. We can anticipate some improvement and optimization of the electricity use in these buildings when they're tenanted.
That's great. And the reason why I ask is it goes back to the opening statement made by Director Joan Stebbins about how this leads back to the Teal New Deal. We travel the world and the country looking at port infrastructure and where there are opportunities to be able to use new and emerging technologies and alternative fuel sources. And I know this is really within the capacity of facilities themselves, but Director Joan Stebbins, can you talk a little bit more about what the opportunity is in terms of the Teal New Deal?
I think the bottom line is that we are losing the kind of industrial space if we want to actually be building things, not just including clean energy opportunities, shipbuilding, things of that nature. That sort of light industrial and warehouse space we are losing in this region. And in fact, several of the buildings that on Terminal 91 that will be replacing are similar buildings at the end of their life. So if we want a future in that kind of work, we have to have light manufacturing. We're also looking at the overall electrical capacity of the whole site, because a lot of the electrical system there is quite aging, and in a maritime environment, it needs to be refurbished. So I would say this is a building block to create those opportunities. We don't That's how I have looked at this, and how, when I discuss it with Managing Director of the Economic Division, Bongjekta, I think we're aligned in thinking about this project that way.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephanie. And I think just to add, when we went out to request for proposals for our progressive design team, high on our list of what they were to be sensitive to and to bring to the fore in their design development are improvements that reflect our efforts of decarbonization. So we're going to get some cool new buildings.
So I'm thinking about what a wonderful thing this is for the industry and fishing specifically, also about being able to move from dockside immediately to cold storage and what that could implicate for their access to a broader market. So it might be out of the scope of this proposal, but are we also thinking about, in terms of prospective tenants there and partners, about shore power capacity and other support for newer vessels, et cetera? And is that going to be built into the infrastructure here as well?
So shore power capacity for both cruise vessels and fishing vessels is built into the overall capacity at 91. And we are also, you will see coming forward in the capital program, quite a number of improvements to the overall electrical system, as well as in our expense budget, planning for the overall electrical and utility systems at 91 that go beyond. Part of the reason we're coming forward with this building is that it fits within the existing capacity, along with the ability to offer shore power to all of our vessels.
Okay.
Just a quick add to what Stephanie's saying. One of the comments I made around when we had to do our quarterly CIP update, and that presented an adjustment of about $41 million to a handful of projects. I just want to provide a little bit more clarity. Some of those projects are involved at T91 with the electrical infrastructure. So last year we had really early indication that our substations and our medium voltage feeders are at the end of life and will need to be replaced. And so we had plug numbers last year. As we have done further planning analysis and we've gotten additional condition assessments, those numbers have increased. So part of that $41 million, I would actually say almost all of it, is related to numerous substations that we're going to be replacing at T91, as well as a programmatic feeder cable replacement program over time. Yeah.
Very illuminative. Thank you.
Okay. Hearing no further, let me ask Commissioner Mohammed if she has any questions. Okay. Hearing none, I am going to ask for a motion and a second to approve item 10A.
So moved.
There's a second. It has been moved and seconded. And at this point, is there any further debate or discussion on this item? Sure. Commissioner Fellman.
So to be clear, the $18 million of demo are not in the NPV.
Yes.
That's true, right? It's not.
Correct. The NPV analysis that you see only includes phase one.
So my colleagues have no interest in having a deeper dive when we're talking about a project of this kind of expense and implications on our opportunity cost. I think this is so ripe for a retreat conversation. I feel totally irresponsible for voting for something like this without that opportunity. And certainly, I'm all for demoing it, clean the slate, so we can make some progress, but until I really have the ability to have a further discussion, I can't vote for this.
Commissioner Calkins.
Commissioner Hasegawa?
The reason why I'm comfortable voting for this right now is because it's for planning and demolition. And I do think that it's appropriate. I don't think it's mutually exclusive that we don't include it for a more robust conversation for project design, and then we're not there yet. I would agree with you on that. I just don't think that passing this and having a retreat about it are mutually exclusive.
Half of it's demolition. The other half commits you to it.
Any further discussion or debate? All right. I'm going to ask.
Commissioner Calkins?
Yes, Commissioner Mohammed.
Thanks. I have a clarifying question, and sorry if this has been answered. I have to step away for a second. Can staff or, I don't know if my colleagues want to share, is there a reason why we couldn't delay this vote? And can we hear a little more on what the impact would be if we did decide to delay this vote for today? Can somebody provide clarity on the implications?
Yeah, so I will say that we were originally coming to commission earlier, and because we wanted to be absolutely transparent with the impacts and the overall CIP, we have moved it back a month already. And I want to turn it over to the team to talk a little bit about, because we have the progressive design build structure, what that delay could mean.
Yeah, I guess I'll start, and if there are further details. So we do have a construction and design team already working on this, Hoffman Mithun, which I alluded to earlier, and a comprehensive stakeholder team around this from various divisions within maritime and beyond. Were we to further delay, and as Stephanie alluded, we've already had some delays before getting before you, there are cost consequences, but I think more particularly for the integrity of the project, it's an opportunity for those contractors to dissolve a bit and to move into other projects awaiting our decision making. And that's what concerns me the most as the sponsor, is just losing the momentum. I think it was alluded to in this presentation. We are in somewhat active negotiations for our phase 2 ground lease. I really can't commit to continuing those discussions until I know that we're secure in moving forward on the design, because a lot of the timing that my co-respondent on the other side of that negotiation needs to know that there's certainty before they make additional investments that they're going to need to confirm their interest in phase 2, which I think will be of great interest to this commission. I can't get into too much detail, but that's part of why I'm provoked to hope you can let us go forward today. Have your debate at your retreat, because we aren't asking for authorization for construction, and it can be informed by what you discuss in that setting.
I'll just add one thing, and Evan, you can add as you like. So originally we were slated for a December commission action. And then we moved it to January to allow more time to analyze our CIP impacts, because we needed the financials for Q4 to wrap up, and usually that wraps up around mid-January. Once we had those numbers along with a clear prioritization path, we made the difficult decisions to move some projects. Now, the reserve funding, I just want to do a little bit of quick math for you, at the risk of doing math at a public session. But if you look at last year's plan of finance, we had about $608 million. That was the number that you saw on a 5-year window. The latest CIP update is $653 million. Now that's all of the entire CIP for the Maritime Division, excluding the Northwest Seaport Alliance, our portion of that, and excluding all of the environmental remediation liabilities. And so from 608 to 653, that's a delta of about $45 million. And if you look at our reserve, our management reserve is 55. And so technically we're not all of it, we still have a little bit left. And one of the keynotes you'll see on that slide is this is assuming without additional forms of funding, right? And that is a discussion to be had, I believe, at a later date. And I believe our finance folks are preparing a presentation for you on that as well. But I just want to note that the reserve is intended, unlike project contingency, we build contingencies within every project and every line item within the CIP. Management reserves is intended to capture the things that project contingencies will not capture, or unmet or unbudgeted items that come along the way. So ultimately, we try to balance that management reserve. If you hold too much of it, you might be too conservative and be giving up opportunities that you can pursue with funding that is just sitting there allocated for unknown unknowns. So ultimately here, I would say we're eating most of the reserves. But one of the things we have to do every year in capital planning is reprioritize our priorities as new projects come in. And so that's going to be the same exercise we have done in the past and will continue to do every year as new projects come around. Thank you.
Stephanie, can I ask you a clarifying question?
Yep.
I think you listed 4 projects in the memo that were delayed because let's say this took priority over those 4 projects. And I'm assuming it's because so if we bake in the roughly 17 million for demolition and consider the 19 million a little bit more discretionary as the design for this, what I'm hearing from staff recommendation is that 19 million allocated or 18 million allocated to design on this project took priority over those 4 that you identified that would be delayed as a result of authorizing this. Tell us why you prioritize this over those 4.
Yeah, so there were 2 projects actually. One of them was the Northwest Dock improvements at Fisherman's Terminal. And we actually went with our engineering team to do the analysis of those facilities and look at, okay, do they really need to be replaced now, or do they have more life in them? And with replacing bull rails and some other improvements, we felt actually these are in better shape than some of our other facilities, and that timeline could be deferred. With respect to the harbor dolphins, we were really confronted with the challenge of permitting and impacts to fisheries that we felt like they were unlikely at this time.
Okay, appreciate that. So in some ways, this was a more serious reckoning of the prospects of those projects as well, not simply a deprioritization relative to the...
I think that's true for the harbor mooring dolphins, but the Northwest Dock we would have gone forward with if it had not been for this. But it does have more life in it, so I think from a realistic prioritization, it makes sense.
The final piece on this that I am weighing myself is whether I would feel comfortable, should it be determined that some other issue arises that requires an infusion of capital during this period that we have now committed to spending on this, we do still have a little bit of leeway in our levy that we could access. And we're talking about roughly half of 1 year's headroom. That would be a significant chunk in 1 year, potentially. But it does give me a little bit of solace knowing that if we needed to, we could tap into that. I think at this point, unless there's any further discussion or debate, I think I should...
Mr. President.
Chief of Staff Pritchard has a comment.
In response to Commissioner Fellman's request, I was reviewing our proposed agenda that comes up for the March 12th Commission retreat, where we will start looking at some of the sensitivity analysis, levy scenarios, and budget guidance for the year. And that'll include a look at our capital program, the high-level initial sort of take. Then that usually what our follow-up, we haven't done it for the past 2 years, but we have done it in the past, is where we take July and set aside time to really focus in on the capital investment program for maritime. I think that'd be a good opportunity to look at how this sits within the entire, TIN is what inspired me to go say, oh, I think we have this coming up within the context of our whole program. So I think there is the right time when you look at that, set next to the schedule for the final approval of the GMP as well.
And I think it goes without saying that, to Tim's point about finding funding for this, we should always be pursuing every opportunity at local, state, and federal level for grant support for some of these projects, which, we hear regularly that there's an interest in expanding the availability of federal grants for maritime, and this would be an optimal project to use it on. So please make sure. Yeah, and Commissioner Fellman.
Thanks for pointing out the upcoming retreat, and I have a hard time believing after 16 years that another couple of weeks is going to change anything with regards to our contractors or anything like that. So I still believe that this could be a really solid part of the conversation. And like I said, I'm very much enthusiastic to see this happen, but the items that you postponed on the CIP don't include all the things that I want to get done. So these are the things that you feel that you can put off, but I see new opportunities that there's no chance. And even if we raise some of the levies, so the phasing of these projects and but making it clear that we need to clear the ground. We need to get busy to have progress on this. $18 million for that. The other $18 million, once you get down the road and design and do this other infrastructure investments, I think there's no turning around at that point. We're not going to leave $18 million on the table. We're going to say, go forward. And I think really that's what today's vote is complete the project. And that's in excess of $110 million. And at this point, I don't think I have enough information to do that. So I'm sorry, I won't be able to join you.
All right, and with that, Clerk Hart, I'm going to ask you to call the roll.
Yes, beginning with Commissioner Cho.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Fellman?
Nay.
Thank you. Commissioner Hasagawa?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Mohammed?
Nay.
Thank you. And Commissioner Calkins?
Aye.
Thank you. 3 ayes, 2 nays for this item.
With that, the motion passes. Clerk Hart, please read the next item into the record, and Aaron Pritchard, Commission Chief of Staff, will then introduce it.
Thank you. This is agenda item.
Thank you, presenters. I forgot to say that. Thank you so much.
This is agenda item 10B, order number 2026-03, an order of the Port of Seattle Commission to advance community protection and civil rights at Port of Seattle facilities, restrict the use of port property for civil immigration enforcement purposes, and coordinate with regional partners to ensure transparency, accountability, and the dignity of all workers and travelers.
Thank you, Commission and Executive Director Goon. This order had a lot of engagement across port teams with legal and with the airport and with the Office of Equity. So I just wanted to thank everybody who participated in putting this order together and bring it over to Francis.
All right. Thank you very much, Aaron. Commission President Calkins, Commissioners, and Deputy Executive Director Karen Goon. My name is Francis Cho, Commission Strategic Advisor. I'm pleased to introduce Order 2026-03, sponsored by Commissioners Hasagawa and Mohammed, which advances community protection and civil rights at Port of Seattle facilities. I would like to echo what Aaron had just said and acknowledge and thank members of the legal, OEDI, external relations, and aviation teams for their thought leadership and partnership in helping to bring this order together. This order responds to growing concerns and federal immigration enforcement by establishing clear, transparent policies that protect workers, travelers, and communities across our aviation and maritime operations. I believe Commissioner Hasagawa in her introductory remarks will go over the key elements of that order. So with that said, I will yield to Commissioner Hasagawa.
Thank you very much, Strategic Advisor Cho. Commissioners, the Port of Seattle has a long and proud history as a welcoming gateway for people and commerce around the world. Our success and our prosperity in this region depends on ensuring that everyone who works or travels through our facilities and that our community members are safe and treated fairly. The Port of Seattle exists to connect people and goods, not to separate families or facilitate deportation. Our facilities should never be used as tools for unjust immigration enforcement, and this order reinforces that we cannot actively assist ICE in actions that undermine human rights and community trust by serving as a landlord for a future detention facility. Prohibiting a detention facility at the port properties is an affirmation of our commitment to equity, transparency, and the fundamental principle that our role is to serve and to welcome, not to expel. Today's order expands on order number 2026-02, unanimously adopted by the Commission earlier this month, which strengthened transparency and accountability in port policing. That order removed naming conventions that could be mistaken for federal agencies, ensuring that port police are clearly identified as part of the Port of Seattle team. It added advance notice for training and operations in high visibility areas like SCA Airport to prevent confusion. And it required annual reporting on use of force and complaint handling, reinforcing that transparency in policing reflect the port's values of equity, inclusion, and public service. Together, these are yet greater actions demonstrating our dedication to making the port safe, welcoming, and transparent. So by order 2026-03, we'll ensure that port properties cannot be converted to new or expanded uses for detention or immigration enforcement support. This is in alignment with what King County, the City of Seattle, and the City of Sea-Tac have already or are in the process of advancing. Our port facilities are intended to be used as gateways for the use of maritime and other industrial purposes. Deportation or deportation adjacent activities do not fit into that purpose. At the same time, this order would not interfere with existing lawful federal immigration activity and procedures that already occur at the airport and our seaport, as is a typical practice at all international gateways. We're leveraging the limits of our authority to do what we can to protect against the expansion of an ICE operation or facility in our backyard. We do what we can to gain insight and transparency into their operating procedures. Unfortunately, most of our information comes from the public rather than those agencies themselves. So additionally, this order will strengthen civil rights protections and education for employees, our tenants, workers, and our travelers. It mandates that we provide Know Your Rights training and signage and strengthens privacy protections for everyone who works or travels through port facilities. For the port, both of these outcomes embed transparency and accountability into operations, including reporting, rapid response protocols, and clear guidance for employees and tenants. These steps build on our welcoming port policy and reinforce our commitments. And acting now, commissioners, sends a clear message that our airports and our seaports will remain places of connection and opportunity, not of fear. The port's mission as a special purpose government is to serve maritime and aviation uses that drive commerce and opportunity and bring economic and positive community benefit to the region. These measures set a national model for ports that prioritize people while protecting our core mission. Collective action with these other jurisdictions like King County and Sea-Tac and Seattle creates a powerful regional stance against unjust immigration enforcement. So with that, I would like to thank the port immigration team that has been an ongoing fact finder and advisor. I'd like to thank legal, as well as the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion for your thought leadership. Director Bujenta from the Office of Economic Development for flagging what potential opportunities are and helping us with the writing of this policy. I'd like to thank Director Michael O'Brien from Labor Relations, as well as the advocacy groups and labor partners who were thought partners with this. Thank you, Commissioner Cho, for your ongoing engagement with the county as part of the County Executive Zahali's Roundtable. And your thought partnership on the drafting of this policy. And thank you to Commissioner Mohammed for co-sponsoring this order. And with that, I conclude my remarks.
Thank you, Commissioner Hasegawa and Francis. At this time, I ask if there are any questions for staff from commissioners. All right, we're going to now I'm going to ask, is there a motion and a second to adopt order number 2026-03?
So moved.
Second.
All right, the motion was made and seconded. Commissioners, is there any discussion or debate on the item? Commissioner Mohammed, would you like to go first?
President Hawkins, I'm happy to. Thank you. Yeah, I want to thank Commissioner Hasagawa for your leadership in bringing this forward, and also just want to recognize that this is not the first order or policy this year that this commission has introduced on immigration, and so thank you to all my colleagues for your continued commitment in elevating these issues and your willingness to bring them forward. We're obviously hearing from many constituents across King County on how important these issues are, and we're also fulfilling our responsibility to provide clarity and protection within our jurisdiction as a commission and as a port. And so I do support this order. It provides the necessary clarifications around what we can do as a port, and I think the parts about the Know Your Right component is especially important. While the Port of Seattle is a welcoming gateway, we push a lot of welcoming policy as an organization. We do work that is that has limited coordination with federal civil immigration enforcement in alignment with state law, and so we also operate an international airport with significant federal agency footprint and federal authority, and that makes things really, really complicated. Unlike many local government agencies, we don't share spaces with federal entities operating under federal law and authorities. That there is a lot of operations that are happening inside of the airport, and I think people do need additional information on what their rights are when they're going through the airport to better understand the different federal agencies that are operating inside of the airport, what the Port of Seattle can and cannot do. And that's really critical information that both workers at the airport and at all of our facilities should better understand. Our tenants, travelers should understand the differences between, what the Port of Seattle can control and what federal agencies have the authority to do. And I want to thank the Northwest Immigrants' Rights Project, who have been coordinating with our Office of Equity at the Port of Seattle since January, actually, and trying to provide education, and we've leaned on them for information as well. I believe information reduces fear, clarity prevents confusion, and education empowers people. And so that's exactly what this order is intending to do, and is very critical in this moment that there's just so much rumors and misinformation that is out there. Providing additional clarification is so important. And let me just say, you all know, my other day job was working for the City of Seattle's Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs, and last year I co-authored all of Seattle's mayoral executive orders and directives related to immigration, and those actions addressed citywide responses that included increased federal immigration activities on City of Seattle properties, legislation that banned face coverings, as well as putting limitations on how immigration enforcement could be used on city property. And that work was very much in coordination with other regional partners, and we're seeing the state now pass bans on face coverings. We've seen new actions from King County, and while the port is a special purpose government and doesn't have the same sort of abilities that some of these other government agencies do, I definitely do think we have, I would say, even a bigger responsibility, because we have so many federal operations or agencies working at our airport, to ensure that we are providing the necessary clarification for the public that use our facilities. And so, again, I thank my colleagues, I thank Commissioner Hasagawa and everyone else who has helped bring this order forward, and I look forward to supporting it today. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Commissioner Mohammed. Commissioner Cho.
First and foremost, I want to thank Commissioner Hasagawa for your leadership on this issue, as well as Commissioner Mohammed for your leadership here as a port commissioner, but also the work that you do outside of the port. If I were to be frank with you, I hate that we have to pass this. I hate that it's come to this. But the reality is that when the values of a presidential administration do not align with ours, that is when we are tested, when we're pushed on our values. You know, earlier today, we passed a proclamation on the Day of Remembrance, and we talked about, or at least I talked about, how we need to start putting our words into action. And although this order is not perfect, and it is not all-encompassing by any means, it is what we as an institution can do within our own authority and our power to mitigate some of the damage that could be done to our communities. And so although, as much as I hate passing anything that goes against, you know, our colleagues, you know, at CBP or you know, on the federal level, I think now is the time for us as leaders to step up and make it clear, not just to our employees or those who travel through the airport, but also just to show solidarity with all the other leaders around the region, whether it's the county and cities, that we are in it together. And so I am in full support of this, as much as I don't like that we have to do this, but the reality is that we are where we are, and it's time for us to step up and do our part. So thank you.
Okay, Commissioners Hasegawa and Mohammed, thank you so much for your leadership on this. At this point, with the motion made and seconded and discussion and debate on this concluded, I'm going to turn to Clerk Hart for a roll, to call the roll for the vote.
Thank you. Beginning with Commissioner Hasegawa.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Mohammed.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Fellman.
Aye.
Thank you. And Commissioner Calkins.
Aye.
Thank you. 5 ayes, 0 nays for this item.
And with that, the motion passes. Thank you so much. There are no presentations or staff reports scheduled for today's agenda. And so with that, that concludes our business meeting agenda for the day. Are there any closing comments at this time or motions relating to committee referrals from commissioners? Commissioner Mohammed? All right. Deputy Executive Director Goon, any closing comments?
No, thank you.
Well, I have one thing, which is unfortunately a farewell to someone who has been really incredibly important and valuable for our commission team in particular. So, Alessandra, I'm going to embarrass you here and say, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this up. We're going to adjourn, and then we're going to come up. We're going to take a picture and get some hugs and stuff. Alessandra, you have been such a bedrock for our commission through this whole period. The role you play in keeping this herd of cats on schedule and coordinating all of the chaos that we bring to the office has been invaluable. We are going to miss you so much. My heart sank when I heard that you were returning home to Chicago. An amazing city that I got to spend a few years in, and so I can understand the pull home. And we don't, and we wish you all the best. And we're going to miss you so much. And so thank you for your service to the port and to our little commission office. And don't be a stranger. Come out and visit anytime. Reach out, and you've got all our contact information because you know how to. No more. Okay. And Fred's going to pile on a little bit here, so. Go ahead, Fred.
Thank you. You've kept us not only online, it's been a rather joyful experience as well, given how boring scheduling can be. So we've enjoyed that very much. But I also feel, well, I definitely want to do the picks and stuff but you know, we have a couple of other folks that are going to be leaving us soon as well, and we're hoping that we can celebrate all of your contributions. And so, Patty, you know, you're sitting right next to her, so, you know, we're not going to let you go without some fuss. But
you're going to get your due.
Yeah, but like, you know, the fact that, you know, and he will not let us do it informally, so I think I'll just embarrass George, myself here with, you know, George Blumberg, 40-year tenure at the organization. And I was just thinking, one of the things I forgot to mention was that maybe we can put a little plaque at Papoose Park. You know, if we don't do it too prominently, George might maybe he won't notice. We can just sort of stick it in there and say something. We have to leave some mark there for this guy. And anyway, but our staff have been great, even a short term. Alessandra, thank you for all you've done. Appreciate it.
One last thing. I don't think I've ever caught you on a bad day. You just, I mean, there's no bad days with Alessandra. You just have always been such a bright light for us. So anyways, hearing no further comments and having no further business, if there is no objection, we
Can
are.
I add,
Oh, yes, Commissioner, you caught
can
me.
I add something?
Yes, of course.
Well, first, I do echo exactly what you said, Alejandra. It's sad to lose you to Chicago, but do stay in touch with us, and thank you for the work that you've done, helping me with scheduling, getting to different events and things like that, and coordinating with our strategic aid and our strategic advisors. And so I wish you the best of luck, and don't be a stranger. You could always reach out. In addition, I just wanted to say, I know I'm virtual today. Before we close, I wanted to briefly address my vote today on item 10A, T91. I did vote no on that. It was actually the first time I voted no on an item while being on the commission, and I would have preferred to delay the item to allow for additional time and information for myself personally to just better understand the project. And I did have additional questions, but didn't want to take up that time. I do believe I just needed more clarity, and I will take the time to review that on my own time, and with additional information and time, I likely would have supported this item at a different time. And as some of you may have known, I did welcome a baby girl on February 2nd, and we are doing well, and I am deeply grateful for a healthy delivery, and just appreciate the kind messages I've received and support I've received from the Port of Seattle and the Commission as well, and it means a lot during this season, and I'm looking forward to being back in person, being back stronger and ready to continue serving alongside all of my colleagues. And let me just add, it is February. It's also Black History Month. I didn't get to support the proclamation that you all pushed forward, I believe, at the last meeting, but did read it and appreciate everyone bringing that forward. It's a time to obviously honor the resilience, leadership, and contributions of our Black community who continue to shape our institution, shape the Port of Seattle, as well as the nation. Thank you, Commissioner President Calkins, for giving me this additional time to share those thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner Mohammed. I'm sorry I nearly elided you from the accolades for Alessandra, too. All right. We are adjourned at 2:41 p.m. Thank you all. And, Commissioner, if you could come up here and we'll get a picture with Alessandra, too.